Hello, welcome back to another Charity Digital webinar. To those of you who've joined us before, it's great to have you back. And to our first time listeners, we hope today's session will be the first of many with the Charity Digital community. To kick us off today, we actually have some exciting news for you all, and we're making some updates to our brand. As you may or may not know if you're new to us, Charity Digital News is part of a wider charity known as Tech Trust, which was established in 2001 to help other charities accelerate their impact using digital technology. We've since grown to operate a series of websites, including a content platform, the UK's only technology donation program, a directory of technology providers, an email marketing platform, a jobs portal, and a charity payment service. To help make all these digital services we offer to charities more discoverable, we've decided to pull these various services together under one single brand. And as of tomorrow, we'll be known as Charity Digital. While our name has changed, our services will be business as usual, and you can still connect with us through our newly named offerings: Charity Digital Exchange, Charity Digital News, Charity Digital Jobs, Charity Digital Marketplace, and Charity Digital Payments. You'll start to see messages about the new brand over the next few days, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter at Charity Digital News. But back to the topic of the day. We recently ran a survey that showed 31% of charities don't use cloud technologies because they see little or no perceived benefit. So we brought in Jamin and Arif from Amazon Web Services and decided to bring you a webinar that can break down some of those benefit barriers and showcase exactly what the cloud can do for your organization and how charities are already achieving great things through the cloud. Last bit of housekeeping before we get started. We're hoping to get some audience participation during the webinar. So keep an eye out for a poll running during the webinar. And as always, we'll be hosting the Q&A sessions at the end of the webinar, so make sure you stick around for that. If you want to ask a question, you can do so at any time by hitting the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you happen to run out of time before your question is asked, fear not, we will record the answers once we wrap up and add them to the crowd, and we'll share this with you by email in a week or so. So that's enough for me for now. I'd like to hand over to Jamin and Arif. Welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamin Gluck, and I am a program manager here at Amazon Web Services on the nonprofit programs team. And AWS has an entire team dedicated to supporting nonprofits in the UK, as well as teams all around the world to support respective nonprofits. So I am on the programs team, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about what is the cloud and how can the cloud help your nonprofit organization succeed. During this webinar, we're going to first and foremost be asking questions. This webinar will have a lot of me talking, but absolutely it's about you, the audience. So please do ask a lot of questions. Additionally, we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of the cloud. What does it even mean to be leveraging the cloud? And moreover, how can the cloud bring value to your organization? Of course, we're going to be discussing some charity examples that are already successfully leveraging the cloud. We want to see in real life, how are your peers taking advantage of this technology to achieve their goals. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the ways where you can actually begin to leverage this technology. So again, ask questions, understand the cloud, see how the cloud is being used, and then get started. So let's go for it. Now, before we really jump into the nitty-gritty of the definition of the cloud, I want to just speak a little bit about some common use cases so we can contextualize what the cloud is for your organization. The first one I want to speak about is hosting a website, that your organization has the opportunity to leverage the cloud to host, let's say, for example, a WordPress website. Additionally, data storage, whether it be donor data or volunteer data, or perhaps your internal data, as well as backup, can be used in the cloud. So you can leverage that as opposed to saving it, for example, on your computer in an Excel hard drive. You can instead save it in the cloud. Additionally, virtual desktops are in the cloud, and virtual desktops is something that you'll definitely want to learn more about. But in brief, what it allows for you to do is have people working remote and access an entire desktop, much like you would see on your computer, but something that's not saved onto your actual hardware, but instead is saved in the cloud. So it's a virtual desktop. And then again, as your projects begin to mature, you can use the cloud for things like data analytics and visualizations. And as you continue to try and leverage that data, how can you use machine learning? So again, just wanted to kind of showcase some upfront common use cases for the ways that charities are leveraging the cloud. And now let's jump right into what exactly is the cloud and talk a little bit more about cloud fundamentals. So I'm sure you've heard the cloud discussed time and time again, but I wanted to give you a clear and crisp example of the cloud so you know when you're talking to your friends or your colleagues what exactly the cloud really is. So, cloud computing is the on demand delivery of services through a cloud platform via the internet with pay as you go pricing. So when something is stored in the cloud, that means it's stored on the internet and in servers rather than on your computer. It's like kind of having a hard drive or server that you can access anytime from anywhere that you have internet. So it's super important to understand the basics of the cloud before moving on to its benefits. So let's spend a little bit more time on this definition. The first part of this definition is the term on demand. What does it mean on demand delivery? So on demand means that you don't need to wait for anything, for example, a hardware or a server to arrive to your office. In a matter of seconds, you can have that technology that you need at your fingertips. As soon as you need it, bam, it's there. Another name for this is agility. AWS lets customers quickly spin up resources as they need them, deploying hundreds or even thousands of servers in minutes. This means that your organization can quickly develop and roll out new applications, and it means in terms of experiment and innovation that you can do that more quickly. If an experiment fails, that's not a big deal. You can always deprovision and then reprovision those servers without any risk. So again, on demand just means that when you want it, you get it. Now, what does it mean services via the internet? Well, services via the internet and through a cloud platform means just another name for really, in this conversation, all things internet. When we're talking about services via the internet, we really mean the internet in the capacity that we understand it, whether it means email or storage of files or database management for pictures, everything in between as well. It goes all the way from the more simple applications, like I just explained, all the way to things like facial recognition and machine learning. So those are the different services we're talking about. And when I talk about via the internet, right, the services via the internet, that just means that the services and solutions are sent to you when you're connected to the internet rather than being stored on a hard drive. You no longer have to purchase and invest in capital costs in those hard drives and no more upfront sunken costs like building servers. Rather, you can obtain those services and those resources I just explained, again, via the internet. And this last point is pay as you go pricing. This is what I think is most important to charity organizations because this is largely the primary reason someone begins their journey to the cloud. When you're leveraging the cloud, you no longer have to purchase and invest in capital costs. No more upfront sunken costs like building and maintaining servers. Rather, you can obtain these resources via the internet and only pay for what you use. We'll be discussing this in greater detail later, but I just wanted to highlight that it's part of the definition for cloud computing that you pay as you go. So a good way to understand what the cloud is to understand what the cloud is not. So back in the day, we had vinyl records and we stored records on shelves where they took up space. We would have to remove a single record and then find that single song that you wanted to. And this was all very manual. And then as technology came along, as you can see in this slide, we went from the vinyl record player to what is now cloud technology, where we can get our music anywhere at any time. If you have a program like YouTube or perhaps Spotify, then you understand that you no longer have to go to your shelf and pick out a song and then play that song and then change that song and do all of this manually, but instead you have all of the information of the music in your in your hands, at your fingertips, and you can access it anywhere at any time. And you probably guessed it, with pay as you go pricing. So if you don't like a song or you don't like the service, you can cancel and you no longer have to pay in the future. So I really like this example. Again, it's thinking about the ways we used to listen to music on a vinyl record, and then understanding how we currently listen to music on things like Spotify or YouTube or other on-demand internet music providers. So another way to understand what it means to run things in the cloud is to look at this example. The example of how we consume electricity and use the lights. It's similar to how customers flip on a switch to turn on lights in their homes, and the power company sends them electricity. You only pay for the electricity you use, and you don't have a personal generator all to yourself to get electricity. Back in the day, you would have to buy and own and maintain your own generator just to get the electricity for yourself. And even when you weren't using that electricity, you were still sitting on that sunken cost of that generator. And this can be compared to back in the day having to buy, own, and maintain your own data centers and servers. Organizations now can acquire technology such as the compute power and storage and databases and other cloud services. Instead of like they used to with a generator, you can do it on demand on an as needed basis. So with cloud computing, AWS manages and maintains that hardware, that technology infrastructure in a secure environment, and businesses access these resources via the internet to develop and run their applications. So like electricity, you can access technological resources on demand and only pay for what you use. So now that we have an understanding a little bit more about what the cloud is and what the cloud is not, let's talk more about what the benefits of the cloud are specifically for your charity and for charities as a whole. As you can see here, there are many, many benefits. And honestly, this list is not nearly extensive. But for the sake of this conversation, I want to highlight 3 of these benefits. The first one is trade capital expenses for variable expenses. When you don't have to worry about a data center, then you can use that same money to spend it on other services that you only pay for what you use, and you only pay as you go. If you look at how people end up moving to the cloud, almost always the conversation starter ends up being cost. And AWS allows consumers to trade in those capital expenses for the variable expenses, paying for the IT as they consume it. Now, I want to highlight the example I use with the record player because, again, that's a capital expense that you're then trading in for a variable expense for an on-demand internet music player like YouTube or Spotify. The second benefit I want to highlight on this screen is stop spending money on running and maintaining your data centers. When you don't have to worry about maintaining your own data centers, you can focus on the things that matter most to your organization. Focus on what sets apart the incredible work that you're doing for your beneficiary. When you think about data centers, we consider those undifferentiated heavy lifting costs. And another way to think about that is to consider that every organization has to do a certain amount of heavy lifting when it comes to their technology, and that includes maintaining a data center. But if you can outsource that work to a cloud provider, then your organization is then allowed to focus its time, its energy, and its financial resources on the things that differentiate themselves from your competitors and your peers, and allows you to focus more on your mission than instead on the technology. The third one I want to focus on here is going global in minutes, right at the bottom of the screen. So perhaps for this audience, global isn't very relevant, but this point is still very important for organizations that are even just within the UK or perhaps just in one city in the UK. Working in the cloud means you don't have to be pinned to a network that might be in a closet on your organization, but you can have access and work remote and still have access to the data that you need no matter where you are. And that leads us really nicely into one of the additional benefits of leveraging the cloud, and that's the global presence and availability. Being able to go global And it will help you understand a bit more about the ways the cloud is available for your organization, no matter where you're working and where your employees are. Rather than storing your data and information on a computer, in files, on paper, or in a database in a closet in your office, leveraging the cloud means that your data is stored in multiple data centers in multiple regions and availability zones. Well, you're probably thinking to yourself, what is an availability region and what is a availability zone and what is a region? Well, AWS has a concept of a region, which is a physical location around the world where we cluster data centers. We call each group of logical data centers an availability zone. Using AWS, customers can leverage a whopping 61 availability zones across 20 geographical regions worldwide. But you're probably thinking, what does that even matter to your organization? Well, that's a great question. And just imagine for a second that one night when the office is totally empty, a meteorite falls from the sky and lands directly in the closet that your organization keeps its computer storage and hardware. Well, poof, there goes all of your valuable data, the data on your donors, the data on your beneficiaries, the data on your organization employees and volunteers. With the cloud, it doesn't have to be the case. That does not have to be the case. With the cloud, your organization's information can be stored in multiple data centers all over the world, ensuring it's replicated and free from the risk of getting destroyed at a single instance. Additionally, with your data stored in data centers all over the world, your team members and volunteers can have access to the content more quickly and without as much of a download time. So, understanding that global presence and availability is a key value for your organization, let's take a look at a case study where this is relevant. I want to talk a little bit about Crop Trust. And Crop Trust is an independent nonprofit organization headquartered in Germany that has a mission to ensure the conservation of global agricultural crop diversity. So it's their job to understand the diversity of the globe's agriculture and to maintain a data set that reflects this diversity. They have all of the records on the different types of the different types of crop organizations throughout the world. And to accomplish this management of crop diversity, the Crop Trust funds and coordinates some of the world's major collection of documents, including things on wheat and rice and all other types of agriculture. Well, their challenge was that they wanted to create a centralized repository for their shared data between scientists because their data set is global and it's reflective of all of the agriculture around the world. They wanted to create a data set that could be accessed from all over the world and wouldn't be risked of getting lost or deleted at a single instance. So as a solution, they were able to leverage the cloud to create a solution where their data was stored in multiple regions in the cloud, and they were also provided a peace of mind that despite the data not being on premise and in their office, you guessed it, it's still safe and still accessible from people all over the world. So again, this is a great example of a nonprofit having a massive data set that is used all around the world, or in your case, perhaps it could just be used all around a specific city. And they were able to keep that data set safe, secure, and reliable, and most importantly, accessible no matter where an individual is. Now I want to move on to cost savings with pay-as-you-go pricing. Again, if you look at how people end up moving to the cloud, almost always the conversation starter ends up being cost. AWS allows customers to trade in capital expense for variable expenses, paying for the IT as they consume it. And the variable expense is much lower than what customers can do for themselves because AWS's economies of scale. So, unless you're in the business of building data centers, you've probably spent too much time and money doing just that, or paying someone else a lot to do it for you. When using the cloud, you no longer need to dedicate valuable resources to building costly infrastructure, including purchasing servers, software licenses, or leasing facilities. Let's take a look at this image. With AWS, you can replace large upfront costs of on-premise hardware with lower variable costs and pay only for what you're using as you need it. Pay-as-you-go pricing for the cloud allows you to easily adapt to changing business needs without overcommitting budgets and improving your responsiveness to changes. With pay-as-you-go model, you can adapt your business depending on the need and not on forecasting, reducing the risk of over-provisioning resources or missing capacity. So as you can see in this image, the on-premise purchasing and buying for peak creates a lot of wasted resources because the true demand fluctuates and it is not as rigid as it looks like this buying for peak on-premise purchasing for storage looks like. So to bring a little bit more clarity to this example, let's dive into a different case study. Let's look at, for example, November traffic to Charity X. In this example, we know that the actual traffic for a nonprofit, for a charity during the regular part of the year is probably much lower than the traffic that comes during the November time and during the holiday season when they're getting a lot of donations. But in order to maintain the opportunity to keep your website up and running, even during times of high traffic, and ensuring that your website doesn't crash, you have to what we call provision your compute capacity for the peak, right? Here at the end of the screen, we see what's going on in November with the high peak of actual traffic because people are coming to their website and donating. But if the provision compute power was lower than the actual traffic, then we would see a crash in the web page. But in this slide, you see that throughout the year, 76% of the compute capacity is actually wasted because they're provisioning for maximum capacity for what's in November. So throughout the year, they don't really need this high of compute capacity. Instead, they could deal with a lot less compute capacity, except for when the time comes in November when they have a lot more traffic. So how can they allow for their compute capacity to be elastic and to grow and shrink depending on the actual traffic and fluctuate with the demands from their donors? Well, the cloud allows you to do just that. Looking again now at this Charity X and the November traffic at the end of the screen, we see that the provision compute capacity with the cloud allows for your compute capacity for your website to really fluctuate with the demand of your actual traffic. So there's very little wasted compute capacity, and instead you're only paying for exactly what you need, as opposed to, in this slide, provisioning too much and having that unused capacity. So this allows for you to keep your website up and running, but at the same time, not provisioning and purchasing compute power beyond what you actually need. A good way I like to showcase this is through a case study. And I want you to consider World Elephant Day, which is a nonprofit organization that, as it sounds, really pushes for the protection of our world's elephants. And they have one specific day where try and they try and garner more donations. And this year it's in August 12th. So like the example that I just spoke about, they have very little traffic to their website throughout the entire year, but except on this one day, they get a spike in traffic. And this is a true story that World Elephant Day a couple years ago was not expecting this increase in traffic, and there was a celebrity that got a hold of this organization's mission and really had a connection with this mission and used social media to promote this this day and the importance of World Elephant Day. And because they weren't using the cloud at that time, they didn't have the compute capacity to support the increase in visitors to their web page. So during World Elephant Day a couple years ago, their website crashed. And as a result of their website crashing, not only did their donors have a bad customer experience, but what I think is most important is they lost the opportunity to get donations. And because their website was down and because they didn't have a compute capacity that could handle the influx of visitors to their website on a specific day, their website was down and they lost a lot of opportunities to get donations. So as a solution, they were able to leverage what we call auto scaling. And it's much like this picture that you see right here, where the compute capacity is able to scale up and down and become elastic as a reflection of the demand from their audience. So as more people visit their website on World Elephant Day, then their compute capacity increases to meet that demand. And they were able to avoid any blackouts moving forward. So this is an example of cost savings, right? We talked a little bit about the pay-as-you-go pricing and moreover, how you can provision your resources in on demand and in real time, depending on the needs of your business, rather than having to sit on sunken costs and upfront costs that you might not need throughout the year. Now, let's move on to the third and last major benefit of the cloud for your organization that we want to focus on today is security. We understand that security is of the utmost importance for charities, and the cloud has the technology to keep your data safe and out of the wrong people's hands. First thing to note here is that even when you're storing something in the AWS cloud, you still have complete control over who can access the data and that the data remains entirely yours. Additionally, once the data is in the cloud, AWS provides a robust set of tools to ensure that your organization's data cannot be accessed by anyone without the appropriate permissions. We call this compliance requirements. Oh, shoot. Okay, let's start that over because that's actually not what you call it. We call that permission. Okay, starting over. Sorry, Mimi. It's not that much, but I'm gonna start over.
No, don't worry, you're okay.
So the third and last major benefit of the cloud for your organization that we want to focus on today is security. We understand that security is of the utmost importance for charities, and the cloud has the technology to keep your data safe and out of the wrong people's hands. First thing to note here is that even when you store something in the cloud, you still have complete control over who has access to that data, and the data remains entirely yours. Additionally, once the data is in the cloud, AWS provides a robust set of tools to ensure that your organization's data cannot be accessed by anyone without the appropriate permissions. It's important to know for your charity's sake that AWS is vigilant about its customers' privacy and data security and has ensured that since day one, AWS customers have always retained ownership and can complete control over their content along with their ability to encrypt it, protect it, move it, and delete it aligned with their organization's security policies. Another thing to notice is that AWS has extensive security technologies with 24/7 monitoring and alerting and rigorous attention to all aspects of securing AWS's infrastructure services and securing AWS's infrastructure and the services are designed to ensure that customers' data can only be used by them and with those with the right permissions. So major takeaway here, and there's a lot more information. I think it's really important to take time to learn about how AWS can provide the security needs that you need. But the main takeaway here is that AWS has those requirements that you're looking for and has provided some of the most stringent security needs to organizations that we all know very well. And I want to use this as a case study with Age UK. What better way to show it than with an organization that we all know, which is Age UK, that has a mission to support millions of people with resources. In order to facilitate that mission, they have to store very personal and often very private data. So rather than having to focus on the security of their data, right? They certainly do have to focus on it and do have to take ownership of maintaining the data in the cloud. But rather than having to focus on the security of the cloud, they can outsource that to AWS and focus on what matters most, and that's the services that they're providing to Age UK. So it's really important to understand that AWS has those resources to meet your security needs. Just because the data center or the server is not in your, for example, organization's storage closet doesn't mean by any means that it's not secure. And we really encourage you to do some additional learning because the resources are out there. We also want to speak a little bit about GDPR compliance, and just to note that we understand that it's really important for organizations in the UK, and that all of the services can be GDPR compliant within AWS. And another thing to notice as well, in addition to all the services being GDPR compliant, it's important to notice that you have ownership over your data, even when it's stored in the cloud, and you maintain that ownership and the direction of that data throughout its time in the cloud. So those two things are really important to understand when we're talking about GDPR compliance. So what's next and what resources are available? We just spoke about the cloud and understood what the cloud is, the basic definition of the cloud. We also understand what the benefits of the cloud are when we talked about cost savings, and we talked about accessibility, and we talked about security. So what can your organization do now? Well, first things first, I want to make the point that you're exactly in the right place if you're considering how to actually begin to leverage the cloud. We'll explain that, okay, let me start over. Sorry, I got distracted by someone. Okay. So now that we understand what the cloud is, and we've talked about the basics of the cloud, let's talk about what's next and what resources are available. Now, if your organization is considering how to actually begin to leverage or further leverage the cloud, then I'll say that you're exactly in the right place. No longer is the question in the charity sector if organizations should be leveraging the cloud, but the question is rather how organizations should be leveraging the cloud and which projects are next. So we understand the value of the cloud, we understand the definition of the cloud, but what do you do now to take advantage of the cloud? Well, first things first, it helps to kind of come up with a bit of a project. And again, I'll revisit this slide because it gives you a sense for some of the most common use cases for charities for the cloud, whether it be a website or virtual desktops, or even as something as complicated as visualization and machine learning. You should really know that your organization has an in-person, real-life account representative that can help you understand your journey to the cloud. The people on this screen are there to support charities in the UK, help those charities understand how they can leverage the cloud, and moreover, assist them in leveraging the cloud to best succeed and achieve their mission. So from this slide, I really want you to take a moment to take down this contact information and leverage this team, because they are sitting, waiting, and ready to help your organization understand what is the value of the cloud for your specific organization, to understand your unique goals, and moreover, how the cloud can help you achieve those goals. Additionally, I want to highlight that we have a credit program that's available with Charity Digital and TT Exchange that provides $2,000 in AWS credits to help your organization begin its journey or continue its journey on the cloud. What it allows for you to do is perhaps test or try new projects, and really without any additional cost, you can use these credits to begin your journey, or again, continue your journey on the cloud. So in addition to the resources that are available with your account team, you have $2,000 in AWS credits that can get you started and really help offset some of those costs for your journey to and on the cloud. Moreover, we have other resources, and that include things like trainings and what we call white papers that are explanations of the services. And really, if you are interested in learning more about AWS and how the cloud can support your organization, I highly encourage you to go to the AWS website and just begin exploring. I know that's vague, but I want to do it on purpose just to kind of spark your interest with this webinar and encourage you to reach out to your account team. That should be your absolute first step, is reaching out to your account team. And once you're connected with a representative that can help you achieve your goals on the cloud, then begin exploring with the additional resources that are available to help educate and support you on the cloud. So we've talked a lot today. We have discussed what the cloud is. It's the on-demand delivery of services via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. We've talked about the benefits of the cloud for your charities, and those include globalization and availability, as well as pay-as-you-go pricing, and as well as the security compliances of the cloud. So now I want to open this up for some questions. I've been doing a lot of talking, and I really appreciate your attention, and I want to open this up for some questions. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamin and Arif. I think you've really given us some great insight there into the real world benefits of the cloud that the cloud can have for organizations, and hopefully really set in stone and put in motion how charities of all sizes can really start breaking down those barriers to using cloud technology, and see the true value of how it can help them grow their business. Question time now, and I'd like to hand over to Mimi to run through the questions.
Thank you so much, Jamin. That was really, really in-depth and really helpful for our charities. I'm sure everyone will be in contact with their account provider.
We've got some great questions coming in. And the first one is, what does the $2,000 in AWS credits equate to? For a very small charity, is this enough for us to get started in the cloud?
Fantastic question. And the answer is absolutely yes. We found that over the time, in large part, over the time of running this credit program, $2,000 has been sufficient for smaller charities and medium-sized charities to be able to support their projects on the cloud. Now, that's not to say that it's always the case, but for the more beginner type of projects, whether it be hosting a website or perhaps managing a database in the cloud, we found that $2,000 is plenty. Additionally, when you speak with your account representative, you can explore the ways to go about increasing cost savings and spending those credits as efficiently as possible. So the answer is yes, that should be enough, and there are ways you can ensure that you don't overspend.
That's perfect. And leading on from that, we've got another attendee asking if AWS have charity pricing, so if they have different pricing schemes for charities.
So rather than having charity pricing, we have this credit program that allows for you to get these $2,000 once a year. So the pricing of the services are already as low as possible, and we've in fact brought the pricing down dozens of times, all in an effort to save money for our customers. So there's not exactly charity pricing, but rather this credit program allows for your organization to offset some of the costs, because we know that cost is a unique struggle and a unique part of the business for an organization, a nonprofit.
Okay. Yeah, that's lovely. That clears things up. Alongside, so you mentioned obviously an account manager for the charity. Alongside this, what kind of support can charities get if they use AWS?
So the support is really robust, and I think that objectively is what distinguishes AWS from other competitors, is the amount of support we're able to provide our nonprofit customers. Not only do you have an in-person, real life account rep and management team to help you understand your goals and the ways that the cloud can achieve those goals, but moreover, you have what we call a solution architect, which helps you understand the technical components to your project, as well as if there's anything to do with billing. We have billing support, customer service support. So In addition to providing a robust set of services, I think AWS distinguishes itself in the amount of support it can provide its customers. And I really encourage those that are on the, listening to reach out and get connected with those representatives.
Okay, this leads quite nicely actually onto the next question from a user, and you probably may have answered it in that what you've just said there, but is there anything in addition to what you've said already that can help someone have that conversation with management about the value of AWS and why their charity should use it?
Excellent question. And really, I think knowledge is power when it comes to having these conversations with your decision makers in your organization. And when I say knowledge is power, it's really that the evidence is available in the value of the cloud. It's not so much if the cloud as it is when will the cloud and how the cloud. So as long as you are taking advantage of the resources that we've discussed today and leveraging your account team, then you'll have the opportunity to provide and present the evidence of the value for the cloud to your decision makers and your management in a way that'll be irrefutable.
Okay, lovely. And okay, another question from a user. If I'm using a service like GoDaddy to host my website, how do I then move to AWS? So they've had that conversation, they've got approval. How do they make the move?
So the best way to make that move is really speaking to your account team and your solution architect and understanding what those nuances are for your organization. I will say that it's not a heavy lift, but I don't want to say exactly how it will take place just because it'll be unique to your organization. But again, first steps first is getting in touch with your account representative and making sure that they understand your goals and they'll be able to assist you in achieving those goals.
That's great, Jamin. Thank you so much. That's all the questions that we've got for today.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. And again, huge thank you to Jamin and Arif. And of course, thanks to all you who've joined us today. If you'd like to reach out to any of the speakers, you can do so following the addresses on screen. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a recording of this webinar along with some additional resources via email in the next week or so. We'll also be uploading it to the Charity Digital News website, so you can visit us there and share, rewatch anytime you'd like. If you don't mind, it would be great if you could fill out our really short feedback form that we send out right after this. It's a really quick 2-minute survey, and it does go a long way to helping us continuously improve our webinar service to help us bring the best possible content we can to you as our audience. We're taking another break from webinars for the next few weeks, but we do have Cub joining us from the NCSC on July 18th. If you haven't signed up for that already, you can head over to charitydigitalnews.co.uk/webinars to do that now. And we hope to see you there. So thank you all again, and see you next time.